Imagine a company filled with truly intelligent people. They are experienced, they know their customers, they understand the processes, they see the problems, and very often they even know how those problems could be solved. And yet very little changes. Every decision needs approval. Every problem has to be discussed in several meetings. Every new initiative needs a presentation, a business case, a timeline, an executive sponsor, and another set of reports. People can see that something is not working, but they wait. The employee waits for the manager waits for the director waits for the executive team, and the customer simply waits. Why does this happen? Why can organizations that hire excellent specialists, invest enormous amounts of money in technology, and launch one transformation after another still operate slowly, rigidly, and with only average results? This is exactly what the book The Octopus Organization is about. Hello, this is Paulo. In this episode, we are going to look at two completely different ways of building and running an organization. The first resembles a rusty tin man. The second resembles an intelligent, flexible octopus that can adapt almost instantly. By the end of this episode, you may discover that your organization, or even your own team, is much more like the Tin Man than you previously thought. The Tin Man is best known as one of the characters from The Wizard of Oz. He is strong. He is solidly built. He has all the necessary parts. But he is rusty. He cannot move on his own. He needs someone from the outside to bring an oil can and get him moving again. The authors of the book use this character as a metaphor for a traditional organization, a hierarchical, centralized organization divided into functions, procedures, job roles, and multiple levels of decision-making. For many years, this model worked very well. When the environment was predictable, tasks could be described in detail. Work could be divided into smaller parts. Roles, instructions, and standards could be created. Managers planned, employees executed, and results could be measured relatively easily. The problem is that today's world is becoming less and less predictable. Customers change their expectations quickly. Technology develops faster than long-term strategic plans. A new competitor can appear almost overnight. A change in the law, the economy, or customer behavior can undermine assumptions that a company had planned to rely on for years. Employees also no longer want to be people who simply carry out orders. They want to understand the purpose of their work, have a real influence, and use their own experience and judgment. In this kind of world, the Tin Man starts to rust. So the company tries to rescue him. It adds a new process. It creates another report. It introduces a new system. It hires consultants. It launches a transformation program. It schedules more meetings. For a while, it really seems as if the machine is moving again. But as soon as the external oil runs out, everything returns to the old way of working. The problem in many companies is not a lack of intelligent people. The problem is a system in which intelligent people gradually stop thinking and acting independently. They start waiting for permission. They stop suggesting changes because they know their ideas will get stuck in another approval process. They stop reporting risks because earlier warnings were ignored or treated as criticism. Eventually, they learn that the safest option is to follow instructions and stay within the boundaries of their job description. This is how an organization loses the initiative of its employees. Not because people have no ideas, but because the system has taught them that initiative is not worth the effort. Most major transformations begin with an accurate diagnosis. The company is too slow. Departments do not cooperate. Customers wait too long. Employees are exhausted. Technology is outdated. So the executive team makes a decision. We have to change. A transformation program is created. There is a new structure, new job titles, new teams, new metrics, and a new target operating model. The organization wants to become more agile, but it tries to achieve agility by creating even more rules. It wants to increase innovation, but it still punishes people for unsuccessful experiments. It wants to give teams autonomy, But every important decision still requires several approvals. It says people are the most important part of the company, but it tells them about changes only after every decision has already been made. This is the transformation trap. The company changes the visible elements of the organization, but it does not change everyday behavior. It changes the structure, but it does not change how decisions are made. It changes the system, but it does not change how information is shared. It changes the metrics, but it does not change how people talk about mistakes. It changes the name of the team, but it still does not give that team any real influence. You could say that the organization is painting the Tin Man a new color. But underneath the fresh paint, the same rust remains. Real transformation does not begin with an executive presentation. It begins when a leader stops asking, "Who made this mistake?" and starts asking, "What in our system allowed this mistake to happen and remain unnoticed?" That is a major difference. The first question directs attention toward blame. The second directs attention toward the cause. The first question creates fear. The second creates an opportunity to learn and improve the entire process. An octopus is a completely different kind of creature from the Tin Man. It has no rigid skeleton. It can change its shape, adapt to its environment, and move through very different conditions. Its intelligence is not located in only one central place. Its individual arms can receive signals from the environment and respond to them, while still remaining part of one organism. In a company, this means that knowledge and decision-making ability should not exist only at the highest levels of the hierarchy. They should exist close to the customer, close to the process, close to the data, and most importantly, close to the problem. A person working directly with customers often notices a change in their expectations before the executive team does. An employee who performs a process every day often sees more clearly than a director which steps are unnecessary, where errors occur, and what causes delays. A specialist analyzing data may identify a risk much earlier than someone who receives only a finished monthly report. The Octopus Organization knows how to use this knowledge, but this does not mean a complete absence of rules. The octopus is not chaos in which everyone simply does whatever they believe is right. Its teams share a common purpose, operate within clear boundaries, and have access to the information they need. Because of this, they can act independently without constantly asking for permission. The authors of the book identify 3 key foundations of this kind of organization. They are transparency, ownership, and curiosity. Without transparency, autonomy can turn into chaos. Without ownership, information does not lead to action. Without curiosity, the organization stops learning and starts defending old beliefs. The first foundation is transparency. Many companies do not suffer from a lack of communication. They suffer from too much of it. Employees receive emails, presentations, reports, newsletters, and meeting invitations. The problem is that after reading and attending all of them, they still do not know what they are actually supposed to do differently. Strategy becomes a collection of fashionable phrases. The transformation is supposed to unlock synergies, accelerate digitalization, strengthen customer focus, and improve operational excellence. But what does any of that mean for someone who opens a laptop on Monday morning and sees 20 urgent tasks? Real transparency means simple language, a clear goal, a small number of real priorities, and the courage to say what the organization will not do. If everything is a priority, then in practice, nothing is a priority. Transparency also means access to information. You cannot expect people to make good decisions if you show them only a small part of reality. A team should understand not only what task it has been given, but also why the task matters, how it affects the customer, what risk it reduces, and what will happen next. A leader can test the level of transparency with one very simple question. What are the 3 most important things our team needs to achieve right now? If every person gives a completely different answer, The problem may not be a lack of employee engagement. The problem may be a lack of clarity. But transparency of information alone is not enough. You can share every report, every metric, and every presentation. But if employees are afraid to say what they really think, the organization will still make decisions based on an incomplete picture of reality. During Project Aristotle, Google studied what separates effective teams from the rest. It turned out that success was not based only on employee experience, the number of experts in the team, or individual intelligence. One of the most important factors was psychological safety. Psychological safety means believing that you can ask a difficult question, admit a mistake, ask for help, or challenge an idea without fear of being humiliated or punished. Psychological safety does not mean lowering standards. It does not mean accepting carelessness or avoiding accountability. It means creating an environment in which problems can be revealed early enough to do something about them. This is especially important in organizations where one undetected mistake can pass through many stages of a process. If an employee notices a risk but remains silent because they do not want to challenge a manager's decision, the organization loses one of its greatest advantages. It loses the knowledge of the person closest to the problem. So a team can be asked another simple question. Can we say that the manager's idea is wrong without worrying about the consequences? If the answer is no, the company does not have true transparency. It only has access to data. Organizational culture is not what a company writes on the walls or publishes on its website. Organizational culture reveals itself when an employee brings bad news. Does the leader thank the employee for the early warning? Does the leader ask questions and try to understand the situation? Or does the leader react with anger, search for someone to blame, and send a message to everyone that reporting problems is a bad idea? After only a few situations like this, employees know exactly which behaviors are truly expected. The second foundation of the Octopus Organization is ownership, meaning a real sense of responsibility and the ability to act. In many companies, we often hear statements such as, "Take ownership," "Show more initiative," "Be accountable for the result." But accountability without the right to make decisions is only an empty slogan. You cannot tell an employee that they are responsible for the result if they do not have access to the necessary information, cannot make decisions independently, do not receive the resources they need, and every change requires approval from several people. That is not real ownership. That is responsibility without agency. The Octopus Organization creates clear boundaries for action. It defines which decisions a team can make independently, which decisions should be discussed, and which decisions must be escalated. Because of this, people do not need to ask for permission at every step. They have room to act, but they also understand the boundaries of acceptable risk. In this model, the role of the manager begins to change. The manager is no longer the person who makes every decision. The manager becomes the person who creates the conditions in which other people can make good decisions. The manager does not need to have every answer, but the manager should be able to ask the right questions, remove obstacles, and provide the team with the context it needs. This is captured very well by a principle used at Netflix. Context, not control. The idea is that a manager should not try to control every action taken by an employee. The manager should provide enough information for the employee to make the right decision independently. This does not mean that the manager stops caring about the work of the team. Context instead of control is not permission for chaos. The manager is still responsible for direction, standards, and risk. The manager should clearly explain where the organization is going, why it matters, what the constraints are, what success looks like, and what must never be done. Then the manager should allow people to decide how they will achieve the expected result. In a traditional organization, the employee receives an instruction. In the Octopus Organization, the employee receives intent, context, and responsibility. A good leader does not build a team that cannot function without the leader's presence. A good leader builds a team that can make the right decisions even when the leader is not in the room. One reason companies move slowly is that they treat every decision as if it carries the same level of danger. Amazon introduced a useful way to divide decisions into two categories. The first category is like a one-way door. Once you walk through it, it is difficult to go back. These decisions may involve very large investments, safety, legal commitments, or changes that would be extremely expensive to reverse. They should be analyzed carefully and made deliberately. The second category is like a two-way door. You can make the decision, observe the results, and then reverse it or change direction. These decisions should be made faster and closer to the place where the relevant knowledge exists. The problem begins when a company treats every door as a one-way door. A simple change to a report requires several approvals. A small experiment requires an extensive business case. A temporary process adjustment goes through the same. Approval path as a strategic investment. As a result, the organization spends more energy protecting itself from small mistakes than solving important problems. Before beginning another long analysis, it is worth asking, is this decision really irreversible? If we can test it, measure the result, and reverse it if necessary, then perhaps we do not need another month of discussion. Perhaps we need a small experiment. Autonomy based on a clear purpose is not only a concept used by technology companies. A similar way of operating has been developed for many years by the United States Army through an approach known as mission command. A commander should not try to describe every step in detail because the situation may change faster than new instructions can reach the people on the ground. Instead, the commander explains the expected result, the purpose of the mission, and the most important constraints. The people closest to the situation are given room to use disciplined initiative. They can change the way the task is executed if the original plan no longer fits reality, as long as they continue to act in line with the higher level purpose. This approach can be applied directly to business. If an employee working in a process sees that the situation has changed, that employee should not have to wait several days for detailed instructions, provided that the goal, the boundaries of responsibility, and the acceptable level of risk are clear. This does not mean acting outside the rules. It means acting in line with the intent, even when the original instruction no longer fits reality. A strong organization does not create people who are excellent at following orders. It creates people who can make the right decisions when orders are no longer enough. The third foundation of the Octopus Organization is curiosity. This may be the most difficult part of the entire model. Companies often try to confirm their own ideas. A team prepares a project, so it looks for arguments proving that the project is necessary. A manager makes a decision, so the manager expects data that confirms the decision was correct. An organization invests in a system, so it defends the investment even when there are signs that the solution is not working. The Octopus Organization behaves differently. It does not ask, how can we prove that we are right? It asks, how quickly can we find out whether we are wrong? That is a major difference. Curiosity means being interested in the problem rather than emotionally attached to the solution. It means speaking with real customers rather than only analyzing reports about them. It means testing the riskiest assumptions before investing time and money in the easier parts of a project. The book explains this through a principle called monkey first. Imagine that someone wants to teach a monkey to recite Shakespeare while standing on a specially built pedestal. The hardest part of the project is teaching the monkey to speak. Building the pedestal is relatively easy, but many companies would begin with the pedestal. It can be designed quickly. Progress can be demonstrated. Several tasks can be closed. Results can be presented. But a beautiful pedestal has no value if the monkey never learns to speak. That is why the biggest unknown should be tested first. Not the easiest part. Not the part that looks best in a presentation. The part that could prove that the entire project makes no sense. X, the organization once known as Google's Moonshot Factory, developed this idea further. It recommended defining, at the beginning of a project, the conditions that would show that the idea does not work and should be stopped or completely changed. These criteria are best established before major resources have been invested, while the team is not yet emotionally attached to the solution. Later, people often defend a project not because it still makes sense, but because they have already spent many months working on it. So before a project begins, it is worth asking, what result would tell us to continue? But a second question is just as important. What result would tell us to stop? A mature organization does not evaluate a team only by whether the project was launched. It also evaluates how quickly the team discovered that the project would not create the expected value. Stopping a bad project is not always a failure. Sometimes it is proof that the learning system worked early enough. It is also worth asking what an intelligent team really is. You can gather the best experts in one room, but that does not automatically mean the group will make good decisions. Research on collective intelligence, conducted in part by researchers connected with MIT, showed that team effectiveness cannot be explained only by the average intelligence of its members or by the intelligence of the smartest person in the room. The way the conversation was conducted also mattered. Social sensitivity mattered. And it mattered whether the opportunity to speak was shared relatively evenly among team members. Teams in which one person dominated the entire discussion did not always use the full knowledge of the rest of the group. This is important for every manager. You can invite the best experts in the company to a meeting, but if one person speaks for most of the time, the organization is not using the intelligence of the whole team. It is using the intelligence of the loudest participant. A good leader should not only ask, "Who has the best idea?" The leader should also observe, "Have we created the conditions in which every important point of view could be heard?" Silence in a meeting does not always mean agreement. Sometimes it means that people have concluded that speaking up is pointless. So how can you recognize that an organization or a team is becoming too much like the Tin Man? The first sign is a large number of meetings after which no decisions are made. The second is waiting for approval in matters that could be resolved much lower in the organization. The third is a situation in which every department achieves its own metrics, but the customer is still dissatisfied. The fourth is hiding problems until the last possible moment. The fifth is continuously adding new processes without removing old ones. The sixth is reorganizations that change reporting lines but do not change how work is actually performed. The seventh is evaluating people only through individual results. Some employees are not the top performers in the statistics, but they make the entire team better. They help others. They connect information. They identify risks early. They improve the atmosphere. They reduce conflict and mistakes. Traditional metrics may not capture this value. The Octopus Organization understands that a team is not only the sum of individual results. What also matters is the effect one person has on the performance of others. Another sign of a Tin Man organization is a situation in which the procedure becomes more important than the purpose. An employee can see that completing every required step will not solve the customer's problem, but the employee has no authority to change the way the work is done. As a result, the employee can follow the process correctly and still deliver the wrong outcome to the customer. The documentation is complete. The metrics look good, but the customer still did not receive what was truly needed. At that point, the organization begins optimizing its own procedures instead of optimizing the value delivered to the customer. The most important message of the book is not, remove every process. And it is not, give every decision to employees. The message is much more practical. A manager should begin treating the system of work as part of the manager's own responsibility. When several people make the same kind of mistake, first examine the process, the instructions, and access to information instead of immediately assuming that the employees are the problem. When a team does not make decisions, check whether the team was truly given the authority to make them. When more and more reports are being created, Ask which of them actually lead to action. When people do not report risks, examine what happened the last time someone brought bad news to the manager. Was that person appreciated for providing an early warning? Or were they told that they were overreacting, being negative, or creating problems? Organizational culture is not created by values written on a wall. It is created by the way leaders respond in difficult moments. A manager can begin changing the system without launching a major reorganization. The manager can remove one unnecessary approval. The manager can share information with the team that was previously available only to senior leadership. The manager can define which decisions employees are allowed to make independently. The manager can ask the team which procedure consumes the most time while creating the least value. The manager can also admit in front of the team that a personal decision was wrong. That kind of action does not weaken a leader's authority. It shows that learning is more important than pretending to be infallible. To finish, here are several questions that can be asked during the next team meeting. Can every person on our team explain what our most important goal is right now? Which results are we responsible for, even though we do not have influence over the decisions required to achieve them? Which process takes a great deal of time but creates little real value for the customer? What problem or risk can we see but are not discussing openly enough? Which critical assumption should we test before investing more time and money? Which decisions do we treat as irreversible even though they could actually be tested quickly and reversed? What information does the team need in order to make better decisions without constantly asking the manager for permission? During our meetings, do we truly use the knowledge of everyone in the room? Or do we mainly listen to the one or two loudest voices? These questions do not require a new organizational structure. They do not require consultants. They do not require a new technology system. They require only the courage to look honestly at how we really work. The Tin Man wants to control reality. The octopus wants to understand it. The Tin Man centralizes decisions. The octopus moves decisions closer to the knowledge and the problem. The Tin Man treats every decision like a door that can be entered only once. The octopus identifies which decisions can be tested quickly and reversed if necessary. The Tin Man expects people to follow instructions. The octopus gives people context, intent, and clear boundaries of responsibility. The Tin Man asks, "Who made the mistake?" The octopus asks, "Why did our system fail to help us notice it earlier?" The Tin Man asks, "Is everything going according to plan?" The octopus asks, "What have we learned and what should we change now?" A modern organization does not need a manager who makes every decision. It needs a leader who creates the conditions in which good decisions can be made without the leader's constant presence. It needs a clear purpose, access to information, an environment in which people can speak honestly, freedom to act within clear boundaries, and the courage to stop a project when the evidence shows that the chosen direction is not working. An organization does not become an octopus organization by changing its organizational chart. It becomes one through everyday behavior, through one simplified procedure, one unnecessary approval removed, one important piece of information shared with the team, one honest conversation about a mistake, one experiment that tests the most important assumption, and one decision made closer to the place where the knowledge truly exists. Thank you for listening. This is Pewell. I would like to leave you with one final question. Can your organization move on its own, or is it still waiting for someone to arrive with an oil can?